The rain fell in a steady drizzle, turning the cemetery into a sea of black umbrellas. Lena stood at the front, her fingers gripping the edges of her coat as she stared at the casket lowering into the ground. The man she had loved, the man she had built a life with, was gone. Mark. Her husband. Her partner. Her everything. The priest's words blurred into the background as grief wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Family and friends whispered condolences, placing gentle hands on her shoulder, but nothing could ease the hollowness inside her. And then, a voice cut through the quiet murmurs like a knife. "I'm his wife, too." Lena's breath caught in her throat. The world seemed to slow as she turned toward the voice. A woman stood a few feet away, dressed in a black dress that clung to her slender frame. Her long, dark hair clung to her face, damp from the rain, but her expression was unwavering. Beside her, a little girl no older than 6 clutched her hand, her wide eyes darting between the strangers around her. The funeral procession froze. Gasps rippled through the mourners. Someone muttered a curse under their breath. Lena's heart pounded against her ribs. Her lips parted, but no words came. The woman met her gaze.
Calm.
Unapologetic. As if she had every right to be there. "Who are you?" Lena managed, her voice hoarse. The woman tilted her chin up. "My name is Evelyn," she said. "And this is our daughter, Emily." The ground beneath Lena's feet seemed to shift. Daughter? Mark had a daughter? The world blurred around her. The whispers grew louder. Lena stared at Evelyn, at the child gripping her hand, and knew. Her husband had been living a lie, a second life, and she was about to uncover just how deep the deception went. Lena felt the weight of the world pressing down on her chest. Her legs wobbled, but she steadied herself. Not here. Not in front of everyone. She forced her voice to remain steady. "That's impossible," she said, staring at Evelyn. "Mark would never." "Never what?" Evelyn cut in, her tone sharp but not unkind. "Never betray you? Never lie?" She let out a bitter laugh. "I thought the same thing." Lena's hands clenched into fists. She didn't want to believe it.
Couldn't.
But then she looked at the little girl, Emily. Dark curls, sharp hazel eyes. Her heart clenched. The resemblance was there. A sharp gust of wind sent a shiver down her spine. The murmurs of the mourners grew louder. Some whispered in shock. Others stepped back, sensing the tension. Mark's mother, an elderly woman dressed in a long black coat, stepped forward. Her face was pale, her lips quivering. What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn met her gaze. "I married Mark 7 years ago." She held up her hand, revealing a simple gold wedding band. "He was my husband, too." Lena felt as if she'd been punched in the gut. 7 years? She had been married to Mark for 8. A hollow, sickening realization settled in her chest. They overlapped. Her Mark, the man who promised her forever, had been living another life. The casket was still in the ground, dirt waiting to be shoveled over it, yet Lena felt like she had lost him all over again. She swallowed hard. "You're lying." Evelyn didn't flinch. "I wish I was." The little girl, Emily, clutched Evelyn's dress and whispered, "Mommy, I'm cold." Evelyn bent down and wrapped her coat around her daughter. "I know, sweetheart. We'll leave soon." She straightened, her gaze locking with Lena's once more. "I didn't come here to start a scene. I thought you deserved to know the truth." Lena couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. This had to be some sick joke. But it wasn't. Mark was gone, and now she was left with nothing but questions. And one undeniable fact. She wasn't the only Mrs. Carter. Lena stood frozen as Evelyn turned to leave, gripping her daughter's hand. The rain drizzled over them, soaking into the earth, the only sound the soft patter of droplets on umbrellas and the hushed murmurs of onlookers.
No.
Lena refused to let her just walk away. "Wait," she said, stepping forward. Her voice trembled, but her resolve was firm. "If what you're saying is true, I deserve proof." Evelyn hesitated. For the first time, something flickered across her face, hesitation, or maybe sorrow. She turned back, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I have proof," she said. "Photos. Marriage certificate. Bank transactions. Everything." Lena's breath hitched. "Everything." She took a shaky step closer.
Why now?
"Why did you wait until his funeral to tell me?" Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Because I thought he'd come clean one day." She looked down at Emily, brushing a curl away from the child's face. "He told me he traveled for work, and I believed him. I had no idea about you until 2 months ago." Lena's blood ran cold. 2 months ago? Evelyn nodded. "I found an account statement, one with your name listed as a beneficiary." She met Lena's eyes. "He was preparing for something. I just didn't know what." A strange, uneasy feeling settled in Lena's stomach. If Evelyn was telling the truth, that meant Mark had known his secret was unraveling. But instead of confessing, he hid it. And now he was dead. Lena swallowed the lump in her throat. "How did you find me?" Evelyn hesitated. "I didn't. Someone sent me an anonymous message about the funeral." Lena's heart pounded. "Someone wanted you here?" Evelyn nodded. "And I think whoever it was wanted you to know the truth." A chill ran down Lena's spine. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. Someone else knew Mark's secret, and they wanted her to find out. Lena barely made it through the rest of the funeral. The weight of grief had already been unbearable, but now it was tangled with something even worse: betrayal. After the last person left, she stood alone at the grave, rain soaking through her coat. She should have been mourning her husband. Instead, she was questioning everything she had ever known about him. Who had Mark really been? And who sent that message to Evelyn? Lena clenched her fists. She needed answers. That night, the house felt different. The place she had shared with Mark for years now felt like a stranger's home. The photos on the wall, their wedding picture on the mantel, it all seemed like a carefully constructed lie. With a deep breath, Lena walked into Mark's study. He had always been private about this room. Now she wondered if it was because he had something to hide. She flicked on the desk lamp and started searching.
Drawers.
Files. Laptop. Nothing seemed out of place until she found the locked drawer in his desk. Lena's heart pounded. Mark had never mentioned a locked drawer before. She searched his things until she found a small silver key tucked into the lining of one of his jackets. With shaking hands, she slid the key into the lock.
Click.
The drawer opened. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, a second phone, and a sealed envelope with her name on it. Lena's breath hitched. She picked up the envelope and ripped it open. A single piece of paper slid out. Her eyes widened as she read the words written in Mark's familiar handwriting. "Lena, if you're reading this, it means something went wrong. I didn't want you to find out this way, but I need you to trust me. Please, be careful. I'm sorry." Her pulse roared in her ears. Something went wrong. What had Mark been involved in? And why was he apologizing? She turned to the other items. The phone was a burner, no contacts, no messages, only a single number saved under unknown. Her fingers hovered over the call button. Was this what Mark had been hiding? A secret wife, a hidden message, a second phone. And now, the terrifying realization. His death might not have been an accident after all. Lena stared at the phone, her thumb hovering over the call button. Her heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to call the number, to demand answers, but a cold, logical part of her whispered, "Not yet.
Be smart."
Instead, she reached for the leather-bound notebook. The cover was worn, as if Mark had flipped through it 100 times. When she opened it, her breath caught.
Dates.
Names. Transactions. Page after page, Mark had recorded something. At first, it looked like ordinary financial notes. But as Lena skimmed further, she noticed certain names circled, some underlined in red. And one name made her stomach drop. Evelyn Carter. Her fingers trembled as she turned the page. Beneath Evelyn's name was another one. Richard Hale, $250,000. Final payment. Final payment? For what? She had never heard of Richard Hale before, but if Mark had written his name down, it had to mean something. Lena swallowed hard. Mark hadn't just been hiding a second wife. He had been hiding something bigger, something dangerous. Taking a deep breath, she reached for the burner phone. Her hands felt ice cold as she pressed the call button. The line rang.
Once. Twice.
Then someone picked up. Silence. Lena's pulse hammered. Hello. A low voice, distorted and unreadable, finally spoke. You shouldn't have found that. The line went dead. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She was in danger. And whatever Mark had been involved in, it wasn't over yet. Lena sat frozen, gripping the silent phone. You shouldn't have found that. The distorted voice echoed in her head. Someone was watching. Someone knew. A chill ran down her spine. Mark had been involved in something dark, something worth hiding. And now, his secrets were bleeding into her life. But she wasn't going to be a victim. She was going to find the truth. And she was going to make them pay. Digging into Mark's secrets. The next morning, Lena took action. She drove to the city library, somewhere no one would track her internet searches. She typed in the name from Mark's notebook, Richard Hale. A list of articles appeared. Her heart clenched as she read. Businessman Richard Hale cleared of fraud allegations. Real estate mogul's ties to shady dealings dismissed in court. Accusations surface again. Who is protecting Richard Hale? A pattern formed. Richard Hale was a powerful man who had been accused of fraud, bribery, and embezzlement, but every case against him had mysteriously disappeared. Mark had paid him. A final payment. But for what? Lena's stomach churned. She had a feeling Mark's death wasn't an accident. Someone had wanted him gone, and she was going to find out who. Confronting Evelyn. That evening, Lena stood outside the address Evelyn had texted her after the funeral. A modest house in a quiet neighborhood. She knocked. Evelyn opened the door, looking wary but unsurprised. You came, she said. Lena stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. I need answers. Evelyn shut the door. So do I. Lena pulled out the notebook and flipped to Evelyn's name. Why did Mark write your name in here? Evelyn's face paled. He told me he was in trouble. Lena's pulse quickened. What kind of trouble? Evelyn hesitated, then walked to a locked drawer, pulling out a file. She handed it to Lena. Inside were bank statements, large transfers, repeated payments to Hale Industries, and one final deposit, $250,000. Mark Carter. Lena's breath caught. He was paying Richard Hale off. Evelyn nodded. Mark said if anything happened to him, I should run. Her voice shook. I think someone killed him. Lena's jaw clenched. She had suspected it, but now it felt real. Her husband had been murdered, and whoever was behind it thought they had silenced him. They were wrong. Lena wasn't going to stop until she found the truth. And when she did, she would make them pay. Lena left Evelyn's house with fire in her veins. Mark had been murdered, and Richard Hale was involved. She didn't know how deep this went, but she knew one thing. Whoever had killed Mark thought they had silenced him for good. They had no idea what was coming. Lena wasn't just going to find the truth. She was going to burn them down. Step 1. Learning the enemy. Lena spent the next 2 days gathering every scrap of information on Richard Hale. He was untouchable, wealthy, connected, a ghost when it came to legal records. Every accusation against him had vanished before reaching court. But she had something no one else did. Mark's notebook. It wasn't just names and transactions, it was proof. Notes about meetings, whispers of deals Mark had been caught in. And one phrase kept appearing. Project Phoenix, payment secured. Lena had no idea what it meant, but she was going to find out. Step 2. The break-in. Hale Industries was heavily secured, but every fortress had cracks. Lena found one. A janitor's schedule. At 2:30 a.m., she slipped through the service entrance in dark clothing, blending into the shadows. She moved quickly, avoiding cameras, her heart hammering as she entered an office labeled Restricted Access, R. Hale. She picked the lock in seconds. Inside, the room was immaculate, except for a locked filing cabinet. Lena smirked. Amateurs. She forced it open and flipped through the files. Her hands froze when she saw Mark's name. Mark Carter, Payment received. All ties severed. Her stomach dropped. They had cut him off. And then, a second paper, marked Final Action Approved, April 15th. The date of Mark's accident. It hadn't been an accident. It was an execution order. Lena clenched her fists, rage surging through her. They had murdered her husband. Now they were going to pay. Step 3. The warning. The next morning, Richard Hale arrived at his office as usual. He sat at his desk, reaching for his morning coffee. Then he saw it. A single sheet of paper on his desk. It was a copy of the execution order. And beneath it, written in red ink, "You took from me. Now I'm coming for you." Hale's hands trembled. For the first time in his life, he was afraid. Lena had just declared war, and she wasn't going to stop until she buried them all. Lena's war had begun. Richard Hale now knew someone was after him, but he didn't know who. Not yet. She had been careful, hidden her tracks, moved in the shadows. But she was fighting against powerful people. And powerful people didn't just sit back and wait. They struck first. The trap. Lena had spent days digging deeper, following the money trails Mark had left behind. One name kept coming up, Derek Vaughn. A close associate of Hale. A fixer. The man who made problems disappear. Lena had to get to him first. She tracked him to a luxury bar downtown, a place filled with men who thought they were untouchable. She dressed carefully, sleek black dress, red lipstick, confidence masking the storm inside her. Derek Vaughn was exactly where she expected him, sipping whiskey in a private booth. She approached, sliding into the seat across from him, before he could react. His eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" Lena leaned forward, smiling coldly. "Someone who knows what you did to Mark Carter." Vaughn's fingers twitched around his glass. She had him. Or so she thought, because the next thing she knew, a sharp prick stabbed into her neck. The world spun. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was Vaughn smirking as the darkness swallowed her whole. Captured. Lena woke up bound to a chair in a dimly lit warehouse. Her wrists ached, tied behind her. Her head pounded from whatever drug they had used. Footsteps echoed. Then a voice, smooth, amused, and laced with cruelty. "That was a stupid move, Mrs. Carter." Richard Hale stepped into the light. Lena glared, her lips curling into a defiant smirk. "Then why are you the one looking nervous?" Hale's jaw tensed. "You should have walked away." Lena leaned forward as much as the ropes allowed. "You kill my husband. You expect me to just forget?" Hale sighed. "Mark made a deal. He broke it. Actions have consequences." Lena's blood boiled. "And so will yours." Hale chuckled. "See, that's where you're wrong." He crouched in front of her, eyes dark with warning. "You think you're the hunter, Lena, but you're not." He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "You're just another loose end." Lena's heart pounded. She had been so careful, planned every move. But now, she had fallen into their trap. And this time, there might be no way out. Lena's body tensed against the ropes, her mind racing for a way out. Richard Hale smirked, watching her struggle. "You should have left this alone, Mrs. Carter." Lena spat at his feet. "And you should have stayed in hell where you belong." His smirk faltered. He lifted his hand, ready to strike. Then the lights went out. A second later, bang! A gunshot echoed in the warehouse. Chaos erupted. Men shouted. A second shot rang out. Lena felt hands on her wrists, untying the ropes. Her instincts kicked in, ready to fight. "Stay still," a deep voice ordered. "We need to move." The ropes fell away. Lena turned, breathless, as a familiar figure emerged from the darkness. Ethan Carter, Mark's younger brother. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "You." "No time." Ethan cut in. He grabbed her hand and pulled her to her feet. "We need to get out of here." Bullets tore through the room as Hale's men fired blindly. Ethan shot back, his movements precise and deadly. Lena had never seen this side of him before. The easygoing, charming Ethan she knew was gone. This Ethan was dangerous. And he had come for her. Lena and Ethan moved fast, dodging behind crates. Ethan tossed her a knife. Can you fight? Lena gripped the handle, eyes burning. Watch me. The next man, who came too close, got a blade to the throat. She was done playing the victim. The two of them fought their way through Hale's men until they reached the back exit. But just as they pushed through, Richard Hale stepped in front of them, gun raised, smiling. Impressive, he said. But you're not leaving here alive. Lena's grip tightened on the knife. Ethan raised his gun. You shoot, I shoot. Hale chuckled. You don't get it, do you? You think this ends with me? Lena's blood ran cold. There are bigger players in this game, Hale continued. You have no idea what Mark got himself into. Killing me? Won't change a damn thing. Lena didn't hesitate. She threw the knife straight into Hale's shoulder. He stumbled back with a curse. Ethan fired. The bullet missed Hale's head by inches, but it was enough. Lena and Ethan burst through the door, disappearing into the night. They didn't stop running until they reached Ethan's car, parked far from the warehouse. Lena leaned against the hood, catching her breath. What the hell was that, Ethan? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his expression unreadable. I knew something wasn't right about Mark's death. I started digging. When I saw you were missing, I put the pieces together. Lena exhaled sharply. You saved my life. Ethan met her eyes. And now you owe me the truth. What the hell did Mark get involved in? Lena hesitated. Because now she knew. Mark's death wasn't just about money. It was something bigger. Something darker. And the real enemy was still out there. Watching. Waiting. For their next move. No more running. Lena wiped the blood off her hands. No more waiting. No more hiding. Hale had made his move. Now it was her turn. She turned to Ethan, eyes burning with vengeance. We hit them back. Hard. Ethan smirked, loading his gun. I was hoping you'd say that. Lena and Ethan spent the next 2 days tracking Hale's allies. His empire wasn't built alone. He had men in every corner, corrupt police, business partners, and enforcers who kept him untouchable. They had to tear it all down. The first target? Derek Vaughn. The man who had captured Lena. The one who did Hale's dirty work. Lena found his location easily. He was too arrogant to hide. A high-end club, surrounded by bodyguards. But that wouldn't save him. The hit on Vaughn. Ethan drove. Lena loaded the silencer onto her gun. We do this quiet. Ethan grinned. You think I'm loud? They slipped into the club through the back, blending into the shadows. Lena spotted Vaughn in a VIP booth, laughing with a drink in hand. He had no idea death was coming. Ethan took out the guards, quick, clean, silent. Lena slid into the booth across from Vaughn, gun hidden under the table. He blinked, then paled. Why, you're supposed to be
Dead.
Lena smirked. Disappointed. Vaughn swallowed. Lena, listen. This isn't personal. Hale. Lena shot him in the leg. He screamed, gripping his thigh. That's for kidnapping me, she said calmly. Now, tell me everything. Vaughn trembled. Okay. Hale's got a shipment coming in tomorrow.
Cash.
A lot of it. He's moving everything offshore. He's running. Lena's stomach twisted. Hale was preparing to disappear. She met Ethan's gaze. They had one chance to stop him. The next night, Lena and Ethan waited near the docks. A convoy of black SUVs pulled up, carrying Hale's escape money. Lena smirked. Let's take everything from him. Ethan nodded. No survivors? Lena's eyes were cold. No survivors. They struck fast. A sniper shot took out the first driver. A car exploded. Ethan had set a trap. Gunfire erupted, but Lena moved like a ghost. Silent.
Deadly.
One by one, Hale's men fell, until only one remained. Richard Hale. Bleeding.
Trapped.
Lena walked up to him, gun aimed at his chest. Hale laughed weakly. You think this ends with me? Lena didn't answer. She pulled the trigger. Hale was dead. His empire, gone. Lena should have felt relief. But deep inside, she knew something bigger was still out there. Mark had been involved in something darker. And this was just the beginning. She turned to Ethan. We're not done. Ethan smirked. I was hoping you'd say that. Lena stood over Richard Hale's lifeless body. The man who had orchestrated Mark's death was gone. The empire he had built? Destroyed. But the satisfaction she expected never came. Because deep inside, she knew this wasn't just about Hale. Mark had been caught in something bigger, something darker. And if she kept digging, she might never get out. Ethan walked up beside her, slipping his gun away. So, what now? Lena stared at the blood pooling beneath Hale's body. Her whole life had been consumed by this revenge. But Mark was gone. No matter what she did, he wasn't coming back. She could keep chasing ghosts, keep hunting the shadows Mark left behind.
Or she could let go.
She exhaled. It's over. Ethan studied her, as if waiting for her to change her mind. But she didn't. She had lost too much already. If she kept going, she'd lose herself too. Lena and Ethan burned the docks that night. Every trace of Hale's empire, gone in flames. By morning, the city was buzzing with news of the mysterious fire. But Lena and Ethan? They were already gone. She left the city behind, taking nothing but memories and scars. Ethan went his own way, leaving the violence behind too. They had gotten their revenge.
And now?
It was time to live again. 1 year later, a small beach town. Quiet. Peaceful. Lena sat outside a cafe, sipping coffee, watching the waves crash against the shore. No more guns. No more enemies. Just life. A voice pulled her from her thoughts. You really think you can just disappear? Lena looked up. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, smirking like always. She rolled her eyes but smiled. I was hoping I could. Ethan sat across from her. Boring life treating you well? She smirked. Better than getting shot at. Ethan chuckled. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past lingering between them. Then Ethan leaned forward, eyes serious. You ever regret it? Lena thought about Mark, about the pain, the blood, the fire. Then she looked at the ocean, the freedom,
The peace.
and she shook her head. No, she said softly. It's finally over.